So I was reminded of a teacher that I had, and he challenged me, in the ways that I would think about things. He challenged me in the questions and the way that I asked questions. He made me solve problems that I didn't really care to think about. But it was the way that he did it. It was the way that he spoke about things. And I always remember that saying, the teacher appears when the student is ready. And I always feel like in his class, I was that student that finally appeared, and I was in it 100%. Now, I don't know why he made me think differently, but the only thing I can think is that the words that he used and the stories that he told and the way that he shared information made me think differently and made me ask better questions. So I'm hoping that today that your inner student will find its way out as well by what you hear. So I want to welcome you to another episode of the Grateful Redhead podcast. And I want to thank you for being here. And I really want to thank our guest, Elsbeth. She's joining us from Ontario, Canada today. And Elsbeth, take a little bit and just introduce yourself and share it as what you do.
Hello, my name is Elsbeth Callaghan. I run the Practically Zero Waste podcast out of Peterborough, Ontario. I have been doing it for 3 years now, and every part of it has been as much a way of, like you said, sharing the knowledge that I've gained in this zero waste journey, but I've also been learning along the way right with my listeners. I've been doing all kinds of low waste things for quite a while leading up to starting the podcast, but it was really a catalyst for me to be able to stay motivated and keep trying new things in this journey in order to, make a difference in the long term and sustain that energy, bringing in podcast guests and friends and conversations, always learning and sharing ideas has been very valuable for me for the process of learning how to make a difference in the long term.
What got you started in wanting to reduce your waste at home? Or did it start at home?
It did start at home. I was in university and I was taking out the trash after I had just finished my period. And I was like, this is ridiculous. This is so much garbage from one person, from one menstruating human being, from one cycle. And I was just so shocked because for the first time I was like maybe really looking at these things and had maybe been thinking about reducing my waste for a little bit longer, and then looked at that garbage bag that was basically just me. That hurts a little bit. So I looked at a lot of different menstrual cup options, reusable pads. I sewed some of my own. I use a Diva cup, and it has been, I think I've been using the same Diva cup for 6 years now. But
that is amazing. Yeah. I have heard, people do speak very highly of the Diva cup, but I think most people, when they think about menstruating and using something that's reusable, it's kind of that gross factor right off the bat, right? So
yes.
How did you kind of overcome that at the very beginning? It must have been a little weird.
Well, I'm not even like a person who likes tampons. And so it was like a big adjustment. And you just kind of become incredibly intimate with your bodily fluids as a zero waste person. Not everybody has to, but like if you're using your reusable handkerchief, or if you are, changing your menstrual cup, you're going to become pretty close contact with stuff that comes from your body. And sometimes that's disgusting. And it's not very pretty. You can take really pretty pictures of like all of the different parts of zero waste living and make it seem really fancy and clean and white and stainless steel and glass mason jars and stuff. But the reality, especially if you're living it in an incredibly frugal way like I am, where you spend next to no money in order to achieve this lifestyle, it doesn't look that aesthetically pleasing all the time.
Yeah, I would say I would love to have that perfect little cabinet, right, where all the beautiful mason jars are lined up. But my collection is just a mishmash of random glass jars that I got from products, and doesn't quite have that appeal. But I must say, when I open up the cabinet and I look at the very limited plastic that's in there, that does make me feel good. And I try to take those moments and appreciate how far I've come, because I feel like, and you might agree with me, the more you do, the more you find areas that you wish you were better in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I like even just the example of the pantry cupboard not being all fresh and tidy and uniform. I have one of those wax pencils. So it's like a China marker. It will write on glass. I have a white one of those, and I have like very nicely labeled many of my mishmashed containers, and satisfies the little part inside me that just wants things to look pretty.
It wants things to look nice. Yes, I have a black one of those too, and I tend to write on the lids and on the glass and everything like that too. And I think that's an important factor for people to realize too, is that, starting somewhere is better than not starting at all. And we can definitely start easy by just reusing a lot of the stuff that we have at home, which, I feel like that's what a lot of your podcasts are about, right? It's showing people kind of these easy ways to get started. You're a mom, right?
Yep.
On to baby number 2 right now. You're pregnant with baby number 2?
Yep.
So what I did a podcast, I believe it was last week. I spoke to Amanda, and we did an episode called Cloth Diapering for the Lazy Parent. Mm-hmm. And I was amazed on how far, I don't have small children at home to worry about those things. So I was really amazed on how far we've come with like cloth diapering. And is there something that as a mom you might share that you've learned, not necessarily would have to be about cloth diapering, but other ways to reduce waste with having especially small children in the house?
One that jumps to my mind right away, often food waste in general for adults and kids alike is a hard thing to overcome, because maybe there's going to be something that just doesn't get eaten, or is no longer, like, you didn't prioritize eating that soon enough, and so it's gone bad, that sort of thing. I do find that with a toddler, it's very challenging to avoid food waste altogether. And so our solution has been to offer much smaller portions and let him try things, like even in a meal where we have all things that I'm pretty sure he likes, he gets a small portion to start with. And then if there's leftovers on his plate, I try and separate the ones that are less gross from what he's touched. Being a zero waste mom doesn't mean that you have to like clean your kid's plate and eat it yourself just to prevent food waste, because I'm not doing that. I can't stand some of the things he puts back on there. But you can reduce a lot of waste by offering things in smaller amounts. That's one thing that comes to mind right away. Otherwise, as far as like zero waste in young toddlers goes, this is the perfect age to introduce all kinds of just regular habits that aren't going to seem weird to him when he's 2 years old. For example, we don't have paper towel and napkins in our house, like paper napkins. So at supper time, he gets a dishcloth, and every time he gets messy, he just wipes his hands on that, or is asked to. He doesn't always. Sometimes it's a shirt, which everything is washable, so it doesn't matter. But small things like using cloth wipes, cloth toilet paper in some cases, the diapers, the reducing food waste, having habits like, okay, you're going to help me carry the compost to the compost pail, or we're going to take out our garbage. Well, where does our garbage go? We're having conversations about what the dump is and how long things sit at the dump, because he loves dump trucks. So why wouldn't you want to talk about
that?
The dump?
Becomes an easy, great conversation. Yes.
It's easy to talk about those things with him. So yeah. So there's lots of different avenues to explore as a zero waste parent, and it's been nice knowing that you don't have to do them all. You can take on little things as they come, and as a new challenge or a new opportunity arises, then you're like, okay, let's have a conversation about this, or let me live by example and show you the things that we're going to do in this family. In other families, maybe they have paper towel. In this family, we use a cloth, because then we can wash it again and we can keep using it, and there's no garbage.
Yeah, that's a really good, interesting point, because most of us don't grow up that way. I mean, there is the generation that's happening now, right? Yeah. And the generation before him, right, that is growing up that way. But for the most part, none of us really grew up that way. It's really like 2 generations ago that they were used to using all these cloth things and using a lot of glass. And so it's nice to see that's coming around. Unfortunately, it's coming more out of necessity more than it is really like a desire to change. Like, we're realizing the importance of why we need to make some of these changes. Do you make a lot of your own food? Do you guys grow food where you are? Or?
Yeah, so in the shorter summer season than Florida has, we produce quite a bit in our own garden. I probably have 20 square feet of, that's not how that works. How does math work? I have a 20 by 20 area that I grow in.
Oh, that's a good space.
Which is huge. In the city. In a rental property, we were allowed to put in like a permanent in the ground garden from our landlords. And so having this is a huge gift to us, mostly for my mental health. It's just the best thing to just garden and have that to look forward to and maintain and take care of all year, or all season. But we do produce some of our groceries that way and supplement our grocery bill. But otherwise, again, even in the like zero waste world, not everybody likes to cook and not everybody likes to garden, but I really like to cook and I really like to garden. So making things from scratch is something that I've always really enjoyed. And I don't know if I haven't met too many people that just hate cooking. There's some people who are just kind of like, I don't really like it. But if you're a person who doesn't like cooking at all, you can still have a lot of like zero waste elements and low waste elements in your life. But many people will tell you that shopping package free or like low waste or whatever, and cooking meals from scratch is going to save you money, have a lower impact on the planet. And then you're in more control of the things that are going into your food. So if you're health conscious, then you can worry about that. Yeah. Anyway, so I really enjoy cooking quite a bit.
Yeah. And I think saving money, sometimes we may not want to do something, but if we're like, maybe if it could save me some money at the end of the month, and I can use that money for something else, it's that incentive that might encourage us to try something new and different. And I must say something that intrigued me on your Instagram page was the mending. You had a guest on that did, I forget the name right now. It's escaping me, but it was like Zen mending or something.
Yeah.
What was it called?
Sashiko. It's a form of Japanese mending and decoration, but mostly mending. And so, Zen stitching Kate Ward was her name.
It looked so cool. And I think of, many times when I want to fix something or alter something that I have, it's like, well, what am I going to do? Just kind of stitch it, that to me made it so much more interesting. She even had like this denim skirt that I saw where she took a pair of jeans and like cut them into like a skirt. And I just feel like those are the things that I love when people share. So I think I was attracted to what you're doing because of the way that you're sharing this really interesting content that not only, right, you mentioned about mental health, not only are we fixing some stuff, but we're actually able to get a little calmness or maybe find a little centering or even if it's just some quiet time. And I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. Do you do any of those stitches? Have you tried something that she does?
Yeah, so I actually ran a workshop for the store that I work for, the retail eco-friendly lifestyle shop. It's called Sustained Eco Store. And so I ran an online workshop about visible mending. And the wonderful thing about it, the sashiko specifically that you mentioned, is that it is not only decorative, but it is strengthening at the same time. So it's an incredibly practical stitch to learn because you don't have to go around the edge of a patch. Every line of stitching that zigzags back and forth is strengthening and also decorating at the same time. It's an incredible art form. But yeah, I really have always tried with the podcast. So many things you can talk about with zero waste. I wanted to make my niche to be about all things practical and how to practically approach this lifestyle because it is really challenging to know where to start. And it's challenging to know how to keep going when things are really hard. And so if you can approach it really practically, really straightforward, find whatever could be the simplest route or this most straightforward route, that is something that people can maintain in the long term, I find. And so yeah, the practical aspect is something that I really value.
Yeah, I agree too, because I feel like if we can't make it something that's easy and sustainable for ourselves, we're not going to keep following through on it.
Exactly.
I mean, at the beginning, I know it's going to be a new habit. It's going to be a little bit different for me. But if within a reasonable time, and I kind of say like around that 90-day mark, 60 to 90 days, if it hasn't become somewhat easy for me, I'm not going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that what I'm doing and maybe I need to alter it or, find another product or find another way of storing it that makes it a little bit easier for me. Mm-hmm. I remember when I started making some like lotions and toothpaste and stuff, I was struggling with the container. And then I don't know even who said it. I wish I could remember who said it, but her advice was pick the container before you make the product. And that always stuck with me. I'm like, she's so right. Because if I find a container that works well for me, then I'm more apt to be able to use that product in the way that works for me or the way that I intend to do. So an example was toothpaste. Yeah. Started making toothpaste, and it was always like in this like little mason jar, and it just, I couldn't get it to stick on the I just had all these problems with it. Then I found these great silicone toothpaste tubes. They're refillable. They look like a standard tube and they squeeze out. And now I fill 3 of them at a time every time I make a batch. And it seems like what I grew up with. It seems very easy now, and I'm sticking to it a lot better. So I always thought that was really good advice that she did. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what it is that you want to share with people about, what's your one tip that you give to people when they say, well, how do I go about doing what you're doing? Or, how do I really reduce plastic waste at home? Is there kind of one tip that you'd like people to start with?
The first step is to buy nothing and just take a look at what you have in your home and buy nothing and do nothing about it. The first time that you hear about zero waste, just let it sit with you. Do some research, learn about it, listen to some podcasts or watch some documentaries, read some books, but don't do anything about it yet. You'll want to, and you probably will do some changes because it's really hard to suddenly become aware of something and then not take action if it means something to you. But starting with nothing and then going from there. The classic start to every zero waste journey, if you're starting domestically or within your sphere of control, is to do a trash audit, which lots of people have heard of before. It's just laying out all your trash and looking at what's in there so that once you can quantify what you have and know what you've been producing, then you know how you can start finding alternatives to this or that or whatever. And then from there, again, buy nothing. If you wanted to make a little zero waste kit, you could get a water bottle, something around your house maybe. You could get some cutlery. You could get a reusable bag of any kind that you have, and just start keeping that in your car or start keeping that by the door and start thinking about those things. But really just don't feel like you have to change overnight and be completely plastic free the next day, because zero waste living is not plastic free living. Zero waste living is creating as little waste as you can. And so while you're not bringing a whole lot of new disposable single-use plastic into your life, you can still use things that are plastic. I have
use them until they can no longer be reused, right? Till the very end.
Exactly. Yeah. The classic example is Tupperware, but I have a whole lot of mixing bowls that I find really unattractive. They're just these plastic ones from university. I don't know. I just don't like them, but I still have them because they're probably going to be the thing that my kid takes to university, because they're just, when he moves out, you get to take all the ugly stuff and I get to buy new bowls finally.
They will last. They will outlast us. That's for sure.
Exactly. And so the stress that I felt at the start of my zero waste journey, when I first read Bea Johnson's Zero Waste Home, when I first started to look into all this kind of content, I was so overwhelmed and wanted to throw things out. I wanted to, and I didn't, obviously, because that was counterintuitive to throw out plastic when it was still usable. But again, I haven't even donated it to a thrift shop because, somebody will use it there. No, I can use it. It's still usable. I will use it until it stops being useful. But it was very stressful at the start.
What I liked about her book was that she does, in many points in it, talk about the things, she did try to, be that person to make everything of her own or, eliminate packaging. And to the point where she was refilling wine, like wine bottles at the winery or something. And she's like, what am I doing? I'm driving all this way. I'm wasting all my time, not wasting, but giving all this time to refill a wine bottle. You have to figure out, where are those points in your life that you're willing to sacrifice maybe your time with your family or something like that. And so it is a matter of figuring it out what really works for us. But I like what you said about don't go and buy anything. When you first want to start, take a moment, breathe, and, think about what that might look like for you. I know when people ask me, where do I start? I really always say things like, grow something, try to grow anything, take a moment and become more connected with our surroundings. And I feel like a way to do that is to grow something. Now, we might not all have property that we can have a big, plot or, a big garden space, but one little planter or even one little coffee cup, right? Put a little seed in it and just see what happens. I do like what you say about taking a moment and reflecting and seeing, what is around you that you can use. We typically all have extra cutlery, right? Just put a little set of that in your car. I mean, that would reduce that extra plastic that you might be using out at a restaurant. So I think that's really good advice that you shared.
Thank you.
Is there anything that you would like the listeners to know about what it is that you might have done that didn't work out so well, or you're still having a struggle with? I know I've been doing this journey for over 10 years. And even when I read Bee's book again, just last year, I reread Bee Johnson's book and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I not better at that? Or why am I not making my own mustard? Like it was these random things that came at me. I was like, why can't I be doing that? So is there anything that you have found that you wish you were doing better or that you're still struggling with?
Yeah. I think that things that I struggled with at the beginning and maybe quite far in was the idea that I had to make my own, especially or that I had to make a shampoo bar really work for me, or that I had to make my own toothpaste like we were talking about, or I tried making my own mascara. That's a story that my listeners have heard quite a bit where, you follow the recipe in Bea Johnson's book and it's burnt almonds and coconut oil. And oh my gosh, my apartment smelled terrible for so long. And the mascara on your eyes, every time you blink, it's coconut oil, which at the temperature of my body
have been all over your
liquid. It didn't work.
Like a big raccoon.
So it was definitely all up here and smelled like burnt almonds, which was headache inducing. It was gross. So that's my favorite failure to share or experiment that didn't work out. There's lots of things that I wish I could do now that, it's kind of an assortment of within the home. I wish that I could make a handful more things, maybe like yogurt or something like that from scratch.
Oh,
but I
would love to be able to make yogurt. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's the one thing that I'm still struggling with.
I know. So I wish that I could, but at the same time, if I wanted to make my own yogurt, then I would have to buy large quantities of milk. And the milk where I am either comes in plastic bags that you cut the corner off and you pour from a jug, or it comes in cartons, which are recyclable. The bags are not. But either way, I'm still buying something in packaging. I'm not I don't have access to a dairy where I can buy a bunch of milk package free. So it's not necessarily a better option for me to make my own yogurt, especially since the 4 times that I have tried making it, only once has it worked and I didn't really like it. So the other times I've been like, oh, well, my milk's expiring, so I'll use it up and make yogurt. It doesn't work for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not that careful when I'm cooking, so I think I know what I'm doing wrong. But the point is, the yogurt tubs that I can buy if I want yogurt. The other option is to go without, which we do fairly frequently. We'll go through cycles of having more than usual or less. But then the tubs are really easy to freeze meals in. And I like freezing meals in plastic better than glass because it's more flexible. So all I have to do is defrost it a little bit and I can pop the food out into the saucepan or something to heat it up again. Versus if I have a mason jar, which you can get straight edge ones, but if I have one that's got a neck on it, you're very careful about freezing things in there so that it doesn't crack. And if it doesn't crack, awesome, but you still have to remember to take it out of the freezer the night before in order to use it, because you just can't get it out, because the number of jars that I've broken trying to ship it out of the jar, just dumb. all of that to say,
don't try this at home, folks.
Yeah,
do not try to bust your food out of a mason jar.
I guess the point of that is to identify the things that you can control, the things that you can't control, and how to find the balance so that it's not all about like, oh, I have a long list of, sure, I'd love to be able to buy cheese package free because we eat a lot of cheese in this household. We like reduce our meat consumption quite a bit, but we're still eating a lot of cheese and eggs. And I can't buy that package free at a price that works for my family and the quantity that we're eating right now. So we buy it in plastic. And I wish that I didn't have to do that. But I think also at this point, I've been able to, I did a recent trash audit in January and looked at all the things that was in there. And a lot of it is the same food packaging that's been there for the past 2 years. And I think that, ongoing, it's like not the same cheese wrapper. You know
not the same package from 2 years ago.
Anyway. And so the idea that I have not found a solution that is feasible for my family at this time. So we've just continued on with what works. And in other areas, we have made other steps. I think that the big thing that I would like to improve on in my zero waste journey right now is entering the intersectional environmentalism realm and conversation and bringing in a lot more social justice to the conversation that has to do with environmentalism. I don't live near a dump. Look at my white privilege coming through right away. Right. And that the environmental problems that come with living close to a dump or something like that usually falls to low-income families, low-income areas, and low-income races. And so minority groups. And that is a challenge that I'm trying to figure out how to address currently, both through the podcast and through my everyday actions, feeding local community groups or trying to bring more things to my little free pantry that's down the street, trying to build community and take it outside of my house and worry less about the plastic waste and more about the people has been my recent trajectory.
I love it. Wow. Those are really great words. Thank you for saying that, because that is really what it's about. I mean, it's about caring for our planet, yes, but the people on the planet is why we're doing all this stuff. I mean, what does any of it matter, right? If we're not here or if we're not caring for each other or loving each other. And you know, so thank you so much for saying that. And it is about being kind to ourselves, not being harsh on ourselves and judging ourselves in the areas that we're not perfect at yet, or, you know, only looking at the places we want to be and just appreciating where we are. So I want to thank you for, you know, being on my show today and sharing, you know, a little bit of your journey and how you got here and really where you're headed with it, which I hope that we can keep interacting when you find other ways of bringing that bigger discussion to the table, because I'd like to definitely be a part of that and share more of the information that you come across, because that's really important. So let people know where they can find you if they want to learn more about what you're doing.
Sure. Thank you for having me on the show, by the way. But also, you can find the podcast at practicallyzerowaste.ca. You can find us on Instagram, Practically Zero Waste Pod, and Facebook at the same one. And we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the major podcast platforms. And we're on YouTube. And all of these times I've said we, but it's just me. Anyway, makes it seem like a bigger team. But yeah.
Oh, that's so good. You've got a we team. I love it. But that's good. I didn't know you had a YouTube channel, so I'll have to check you out there as well.
Yeah, trying to explore new avenues to go down before the baby comes. To be like, well, I can't get a podcast episode every week. Maybe I'll do a YouTube video. Maybe I'll do nothing. Maybe I'll just stay at home and feed a baby.
Right.
Yeah.
That's maybe what you're doing some days, right? When do you do for your baby number 2?
August.
Oh, very good. Well, I wish you the very best. I look forward to our continued conversation. And thank you again for making time to be on the Grateful Redhead podcast today. So if you've enjoyed what you've heard and you're listening out there and you think, I know cool people like Elsbeth and I think you should be talking to them, then please reach out to me and let me know so I can reach out to them and get them on the show. So until we meet again, please be kind to one another and love each other. Peace out.
Thanks for having me.